Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Susan Evans, and I'm honored to welcome you to today's webinar with Dr. James and Dr. Lefferman. Today, we will explore the practices and habits that contribute to a healthy, vibrant, and long life to gain valuable insight and actionable strategies to help you thrive and achieve optimal wellness for yourself and your loved one. Kensington Senior Living has 7 unique communities, 4 located in Virginia, Maryland, and New York, and 3 sister communities located in California. Kensington is truly privileged to support care partners and professionals from coast to coast. Kensington focuses on relationship-based care built on the foundation of our promise to love and care for your family as we do our own. That promise was what initially drew me to become a member of the Kensington family. It is programs such as the one you are attending now that are so important for those of us walking through a caregiver journey to hear from expert professionals on keeping us current with the latest advances in care, management, and treatment of conditions that affect seniors and their families. Thank you, Kensington Senior Living, for supporting and sponsoring these educational webinars. A copy of today's webinar will be delivered to your inbox with links to connect you to Dr. James and Dr. Lefferman. Please share the webinar with friends and family. At the end of the program, we will have a conversation with questions submitted at registration, and I encourage everyone to use the Q&A function in Zoom. Please join me in welcoming Dr. James and Dr. Lefferman. Can you please join me? Hi, Dr. James. You're muted.
He's good to go.
You good? Dr. Lefferman, can you join us?
I'm just waiting for the video to be accepted, and there we go.
There it is.
Excellent. Thank you, Susan, for that introduction.
Great. I'm so excited for today because the audience is really in for a special treat. We've had conversations, the 3 of us, before, and the dynamic is so interesting from your perspective. So I'm really excited about today. But let's go ahead and start. Dr. James, share with the audience who you are and a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you, Susan. Everyone's an honor. Thanks for making time for us here. My background in brief, family functional medicine for 30 years here in Colorado. I'm coming to you from 8,000 feet in the Rockies right now. I've been teaching yoga in mindfulness practices for over 35 years. And my goal, and I've done this in a lot of the work I've done over the last number of years, I've written 14 books on self-care and the power that we have every single day to make little incremental shifts in how we view our self-care so we can be successful with something that still for a lot of people seems like, oh my gosh, it looks like a laundry list of all the things I should be doing. What if I could do it in a very beautiful incremental way and enjoy daily successes? So that's what today is all about, and I hope everyone enjoys our time together. Dr. Lefferman?
Thank you, Dr. Rouse. So I'm Dr. Matthew Lefferman. I am a geriatric physician in Los Angeles. I work in particular at the Kensington Redondo Beach facility. I'm their medical director. And through my practice of taking care of seniors and making house calls, I feel like I have a particular insight in terms of what makes them healthy and well versus just seeing someone in an office, because it's the approach is to really evaluate their the full breadth, and I would say not just their medical needs, but their social, emotional needs. And so I really try and make that a part of my practice, encouraging patients to be active and involved in activities. And I think over the course of the next hour, we'll have a chance to discuss what some of those activities are in terms of how seniors can be healthy beyond just taking medications.
I love that you said that, because one of our topics today is a pill doesn't solve, but I'll let the audience ponder on that for a minute. I'd like to talk, so we're really talking today about longevity and really healthy lifestyle and tips for our audience about how to live, hopefully, an enjoyable, healthy life. And, you know, one topic that you hear about all the time, and I don't know if you ever see ads on social media or whatever, is sleep. Dr. James, can we start with you? And then we'll have a discussion with Dr. Lefferman about sleep, the importance of sleep, tips for sleep. What do we need to know about sleep?
I think that sleep, thank goodness, has become to the forefront of wellness. And it's been a long time in coming. I think we've learned over these last few decades, well, the research out there, everything from longevity to memory health, cardiovascular well-being, certainly emotional well-being. Sleep is a pillar of well-being. And I think for a lot of us who were under the influence of what it meant to be someone who could enjoy our telephones and our televisions in our bedrooms or lying on our pillow, we're starting to learn a lot about how it is that sleep needs to have a ritual. And the ritual of systematically winding down every single evening to give yourself permission to get out of technology, get out of stimulus, and give yourself permission to really start really engaging with the ritual. And I think there's two things I think we should all kind of consider. What is our present sleep ritual, if we have one? And what does that ritual give us in terms of a predictable sleep time? So many things that I'm learning about these days is the power of something called the circadian rhythm, which is basically the 24-hour clock that everyone has based on the sun setting and rising and how that affects our physiology, including things like melatonin and other hormones associated with wakening in the morning, like cortisol. So the thing I'd love for everyone to learn about today is if you could do two things differently starting tonight, one would be pick a sleep time that you can truly ritualize and connect to. Find that sleep time and go, this is a time I believe I can do, and I can predictably find myself to sleep. That'd be the first thing I would encourage everyone to do. And the second thing, I would encourage everyone to have a practice at least 30 minutes before sleep time. And that sleep practice would be something as simple as not having your face in a phone, not watching television, and having something that may even be sort of a spiritual or practice that really helps you with your own self-care. A really interesting study that was done on the power of gratitude journaling 30 minutes before bedtime, where subjects were literally just asked to do simple things such as write 5 things down before bed, and how that affected sleep was profound. Studies show that it not only impacted the length of their sleep, but the depth and quality of their sleep. And really interesting, I hope this is a thing that everyone gets excited about. Not only did it help their sleep, but studies show that gratitude practice the following morning helped those subjects to actually wake up, move their body, exercise, eat a healthy breakfast, and be more productive over the next 8 hours, not just because of their sleep, but because of their ability to feel good emotionally and feel a level of stability with how they reacted to things happening in their lives. So I think the beautiful thing about this, you're going to sleep better, you're going to sleep deeper, and the following day you will perform at a level that's going to make you feel like, oh my goodness, I am playing with I read the World Health Organization has this new #1, I guess they call it the way in which a predisposition or a personality type of someone who has the highest level of well-being, they exhibit zest. Now, Susan, I think you and I, who are in our early 60s, that zest word is something we probably heard we were in grade school, but zest is making a comeback to the World Health Organization. So I love that zesty opportunity that we have through gratitude.
So wake up with a smile. Dr. Lefferman?
Exactly.
Those are great suggestions, and I just to piggyback, and again to give my worldview is more the senior population, maybe those who are living in facilities or those who are on, have multiple chronic medical conditions. And first, just to say in that there's now a medical term for what Dr. Rouse is mentioning and talking about, and that's sleep hygiene. And obviously, we think of personal hygiene, be it showering, etc. But there's a whole study now around sleep. A lot of what Dr. Rouse has mentioned in terms of the setting at home, the stimulants that are around you, getting the right environment, maybe doing practices like Dr. Rouse mentioned. But once you really take the time to think about what might be affecting their sleep hygiene. And I think in particular, as it pertains to seniors, I think first and foremost, their medications. And so, there are medications that might be keeping you up at night. There might be medications such as a diuretic that might be causing you to get up to go to the bathroom. And so we really want to take a hard look at them, and are they truly necessary? And I agree with what Dr. Rouse is saying. Again, it's not just going to the medications to help you to sleep. Ambien, for instance, probably one of the most prescribed and overprescribed medications out there. Because are there other other ways to treat the insomnia, changing the environment, addressing their anxiety that they might be having. So I mean, it's a frequent call for me from a community, let's say like a Kensington, is the patient was confused during the daytime. But I've learned more and more over the years that one of my first questions should be, well, what was their nighttime routine like? And if they're not sleeping well at night, then it's going to lead to problems throughout the day. And for facilities, in addition to medications, you might have certain noises that are going off. In a healthcare environment, maybe alarms or alerts, walkie-talkies from staff members, as well as you might have a roommate who has a completely different sleep schedule. So the right environment and right facility can help to really adjust things to help you to sleep. And I think that from my experience, it's the partnership that the Kensington has with their families and residents, it helps to bring that to the forefront.
You bring up, first of all, I want to tell the audience that we have doctors on here, but we're not prescribing anything. So anything you hear, whatever, you should always obviously talk to your physician about. But which brings me to my question about CBD. And CBD is a hemp product that, can help with sleep. Do either of you have thoughts on CBD?
Dr. Lefferman?
Okay, sure. I'll jump in. I'd say there's a lot of misunderstanding and a lot of lack of knowledge, and I would say hesitancy, especially in seniors. But from my perspective, and I've spoken with this over the last several years, with more and more frequency, is that it's a natural substance with very few side effects. So if you compare, let's say, I mentioned Ambien before, I'm not just trying to pick on them, but the toxicity of the drugs that our seniors are putting into their system, which are not natural. I do recommend CBD products to my patients, and in particular related to sleep, it can be helpful. And there are different cannabinoids, as they're called, the different specific derivatives. There are many that have been discovered. It's an area of continuing research. But there's one in particular called CBN, as in Nancy, and there have been some studies showing that CBN can help with sleep. My experience has been that, in particular, they're in the gummy version, because that's one of the questions as it relates to cannabis. We're not necessarily talking about smoking it, but there are also patches, there are liquids. And then there are also edibles, and in particular, the gummy edibles, from my experience, has been well tolerated and easy to ingest by seniors.
I think Dr. James is smiling because I actually did a webinar on CBD, and I called him afterwards and I go, "What is this CBN? Tell me about this CBN." So, Dr. James, I'm sure you have something to share.
Well, number one, I love Dr. Lefferman. I love his knowledge. I love his heart. And I think what's beautiful about CBN is that to his support, a lot of data is coming out. And it's interesting, back when both Dr. Lefferman and I were in school, we never even knew what the endocannabinoid system was. We didn't know, we were never trained on it. We never heard about it. And over the last, maybe 10 years or so, it's finding its way into the mainstream about how this endocannabinoid system is not this far out idea that may or may not be happening in real life. We all have it, and it's responsible for managing our emotions, so much of everything that we do, from stress to anxiety to sleep patterns. So the endocannabinoid system, not only does it benefit from things like CBN and CBD, it benefits from things like meditation, breathing practices, anything that we can do to help us to help our stress response to be more normalized. There's something called and I think all of us probably have shades of this every day, something called sympathetic dominance, where our nervous system is shunted towards stress or fight or flight. And studies show that when our endocannabinoid system is undernourished, because it's not having either CBD or CBN or balanced practice around mindfulness or yoga or breathing practices, the endocannabinoid system becomes somewhat deficient, which will even lead to more of a sympathetic dominance. So I think, to concur around the idea of CBD, I love the idea of an integrated practice. CBN is wonderful. CBD can be very effective. combine that with lifestyle practices, particularly at bedtime, a breathing practice, a gentle yoga practice with your CBN exponentially helps the effectiveness. And I think there's something beautiful about you being engaged in a practice alongside of taking something that I really think helps to build our self-esteem and our confidence. And studies show actually helps to augment how that endocannabinoid system performs all day and all night.
I'm going to ask a question for our audience because I think a lot of people are thinking about it. And I'm actually thinking about my mother, who goes to sleep with TV every night. And you said it's really important to shut that down. Both of you talked about that with sleep hygiene and really practices to really help and encourage a healthy night's sleep. So do you go cold turkey, or do you say, no, I think if I said to my mother, the TV's off at 8, she would be like, no, it's not. But maybe if I say, why don't you watch 10 minutes of TV rather than an hour? I mean, I don't know. Any thoughts on that, Dr. Lefferman or Dr. James?
Well, maybe it depends on what they're watching.
So true.
I've heard of multiple patients, given the political riffraff over the past decade, who really, point to, well, first of all, they're addicted and they can't get away from the political news, but then also they'll say that they just feel like it affects their health so negatively. So, maybe you can find, good shows on National Geographic, animals, playing in the woods peacefully. So
History Channel.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And then,
I'm gonna piggyback on Dr. Lefferman what he said, because I don't think it's cold turkey necessarily, but I have to be really mindful about what it is that you're watching before bedtime. And I think the news, oh my gosh, that's the worst thing I believe we could be introducing to our brain and our mind and our nervous system before bedtime. I'm going to concur with Dr. Lefferman. How about Hallmark? Like, let's just do Hallmark upwards maybe to an hour before bed. But there is a lot of good science that says if we can step away from television at least a good 30, but ideally 45 minutes before bedtime, that is going to really help our innate sleep chemistry to engage, because we're not looking at blue light with that television. So end the day on Hallmark or fuzzy animals playing in the woods. Take a good 30 minutes, do your breathing practice, do prayer, gratitude journal, and have at least a little window in between television and pillow time.
Steve just commented and he said, just take the TV out of the room.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, yeah, no, your TV doesn't work. Oh, gosh, they don't have that part.
Go, Steve. I'm with you, Steve.
That's kind of cold turkey, but I like that. Let's talk a little bit about, I know that both of you want to talk about this, and I just have in parentheses, based on our conversation a couple months ago, a pill doesn't solve. So why don't I just start with a pill doesn't solve, and Dr. Lefferman, why don't you complete the sentence?
Pill doesn't solve life's ills. And, I would say very much in my practice, it's taking medications away and with the philosophy that less is more. And, I mentioned a few earlier, but, I'm frequently taking care of patients. They're seeing multiple specialists, and doctors' instinct is to do, like, that's, to be honest, the hardest thing as a doctor is not to prescribe and to say, hey, we're just going to watch and wait. Or let's say a patient has, some leg swelling, like, let's elevate your legs. Like, why do we need to instinctively give them, a Lasix, a diuretic, which comes with a host of potential side effects. So, that's one big category. Statin medications are overly prescribed. From my perspective, there are studies that show that it can affect your cognitive function in addition to causing muscle fatigue. But I would say 90% of patients that I, at a new patient visit that I start seeing, are on statin medications. Aspirin is another one which can cause, frequent bruising, and there's more and more evidence that it's questionable. It used to be the standard of care was to give aspirin to everyone, thinking it could prevent strokes, but it's especially as one ages, the potential for side effects is higher. Another common one to mention are reflux medications, proton pump inhibitors like Nexium, Protonix, and these are shown to have side effects such as high rates of pneumonia, falls. And so this isn't ask your doctor, discuss this with your primary care physician, but this is, food for thought, and just to show the, it's a systemic issue, and I don't know how we necessarily get away from it, but as doctors, we're programmed to follow the herd. We're programmed to be programmatic, to check off those boxes, and that's really the way the system, unfortunately, is set up.
Anybody would be lucky enough to have you as their doctor or your team.
Thank you.
You, Dr. James, too. I'm sure Dr. James has something to add since he cooks.
I think, Susan, it's a fantastic question. I know a few months ago we were chatting, both Dr. Lefferman and myself, and you, Susan, we were all really saying how we really believe that pills don't always solve, and I think ... or pills not for all these things. But I'm a big believer that when I work with a patient, one of the things I love to do is look at a lifestyle integration to the pill. If the pill is necessary, let's also bring in a practice. Because I think that so often is that a pill can do amazing things. It can bring phenomenal relief. It can help with stabilizing physiology, whatever the case may be. But there's a lot to be said for an engagement with the pill. So whether it is that, whether you're doing something for reflux, but you could also say, oh my goodness, hey, I know how much you love your marinara, but that may not be your best choice before bedtime. And you actually get a chance to make some decisions alongside of taking the prescription, or you have an opportunity to see, well, man, you know what? I started doing this change with my diet or my morning routine. I wasn't having coffee later in the afternoon, so my Ambien didn't seem to be as necessary. These kind of things, I always encourage my patients, let's think about a complementary practice that you could have alongside of this. And to Dr. Lefferman's support and his ideas around statins, there's a lot to be said for if we are having to be on a statin, can we stay at the lowest dose possible? And then we see a lot of evidence how lifestyle and managing our lifestyle can help us to stay at that lower dose versus over years having that elevation in dosage be something that's just how it goes. So I think there's a lot of proactive opportunities we can all have alongside of our medication and potentially in lieu of.
I'm going to ask the question because I'm sitting here thinking about this. It's all so good. I mean, it's great information for everybody to have. But I look at the generations, and I have my oldest daughter is a doctor, and then I have my mother, and then there's a bunch of stuff behind that and all in between. But I look at my mother, who will call me in the morning. Oh, my leg hurts. I need a pill. I said, go for a walk, stretch it out. And then my daughter, who's like, I don't want to take a pill for anything. Do you think there's a generational education going on right now that is going in the right direction?
I do. Absolutely.
Well, I guess we won't invest in pharmaceuticals anymore, but I don't invest in pharmaceuticals. I'm kidding, but I actually really do think that there is this change going on, and I love it.
Well, social media and COVID really brought to the fore some of these questions, and with people have to be their own advocate, their best advocate. There's a certain good and bad to that. Where are you going to get information? Doctors hate hearing about their competitor, Dr. Google, where a lot of patients and families get information from. So it can be dangerous, but I think with these outlets, you have people question. In general, questioning is good, but you have people really investigating and questioning their medical care.
I think to Dr. Lefferman's point, Susan, and I'm so appreciate that, Doctor, is that that's why I think opportunities like for us to meet like this, to learn about how it is that there's opportunities to learn and ask questions. I've never seen a physician who wasn't excited about a person who came in and said, you know what, I have been having these leg cramps and I've been taking this medication, but I've also read that magnesium is a very common deficiency. Is that potentially something that could be helpful? Are there some foods that are naturally rich in magnesium? Whatever there may be cases there. I think, Susan, so I think generationally speaking, there's a lot of new bridge building around being more proactive. And at the same time, knowing that there may be other solutions where patients can be that much more excited about partnering with their physician. Because I've yet to meet a physician who's not excited about helping their patient to navigate away from polypharmacy and being a whole bunch of medicines and getting it down to what's absolutely necessary.
Yes. I agree. Let's talk a little bit about emotional health, and we'll start with Dr. Lefferman, just about, emotional health, depression, mindfulness. Just if we could just throw a bunch of them into the category about, your head health. And you talked about social ability, and I love that because I think that's so critical.
So, I mean, this question could be an hour unto itself, for
Okay, go
starters.
for it.
But I like to use, recently I've been using the example of COVID, which I mentioned before. But it was a tragic time, and particularly as it pertains to seniors. And while I had a large number of deaths from COVID itself, I also had a large number of deaths from the social, emotional deficiencies that came about because of COVID, in that residents were locked in, were in their rooms. They had very little interaction. They weren't able to have meals together. They weren't able to see and touch family members. And so there were high rates of depression. There were falls. There was suicidality. There was poor appetite. And getting a meal in a styrofoam container is certainly not. If you've been to a meal at the Kensington, it's a little bit different. It's a fine dining experience, and to go from that to getting food in a styrofoam container is very different. And while there is good to Zoom and to be able to see someone and hear your voice, there's real evidence behind the endorphins and other positive changes that happen when you actually touch someone, when you smell them, all of the senses together, especially someone like a loved one that's close to you and that you recognize. So I think that it really brought these things to the fore. And what I see in seniors is beyond just this the need for interaction is multifold, and it can be very difficult for them to access outlets. And some that I think that are really important. One in particular is a religious outlet. And so in facilities, it's difficult to meet the various needs of their population. But you have a resident who maybe got a lot of enrichment and involvement, interaction from being involved in a church, synagogue, mosque, etc., and now they're unable to get out, or their access is based on the van schedule at the facility. So that makes things very, very challenging. Another big area that I think is worth opening up, and I think there isn't enough discussion around sexual health of seniors, and doesn't necessarily mean intercourse. It means different things to different people, but that intimate interaction can easily be lost and not given access to. And I think, unfortunately, too often stigmatized in the senior population and in facilities. So I think those are a couple of areas to really think about and focus on.
I can't agree with you more. During COVID, when my dad actually lived at Kensington, I just felt like I was in a bad movie. It was just so incredibly hard because, especially, I mean, anybody, children, teenagers, parents, grandparents, great grandparents, there's nothing like a really good hug. And no, it really it does more than just, I mean, it just makes people feel good. And so the hugs is what I miss so much. I remember I snuck a couple in during COVID. Like, oh no, I'm gonna get caught.
Don't tell anyone.
Don't tell anyone. Dr. James?
Just to kind of bring one more piece to what Dr. Lefferman was talking about, today or this year, the Surgeon General here in the United States said that loneliness, social isolation is an epidemic. For them to make that level of a statement, I think it really underscores how important it is for us to have, hopefully, curate a community, curate chosen family. If you don't have family close by, look at your spaces where you have people around you. And, this might be something that's going to be, I love sharing this data because it made me as a 61-year-old person who's been married for over 30 years. I've got children in their 20s. And the thing that I'm notorious for, if it's the word notorious, maybe it wouldn't be that, is hugging. I hug my kids for 21 seconds. Why? Because studies show that at 21 seconds, you break through to a higher level of oxytocin. And oxytocin is the trust bonding hormone. It also has phenomenal anti-inflammatory benefits. It's tremendous for heart health and has a beautiful relationship to emotional well-being. So I think what I'd encourage everyone who's listening and watching tonight, do whatever you need to do, whatever you feel you can do. And I really believe vulnerability lets in light. If you are lonely, it is an important thing to allow the light in by saying, I'm lonely. I need to be active about finding a community, creating a friendship. And if I do have that one person, and I'm going to cultivate all I can from those people. If you have a lover in your family, a bestie that you're connected to, the things like hugging is medicine. A 6-second kiss also has the same experience, cheek or lips, for oxytocin. I think that I love about this subject more than anything, I believe so often in the scorecard of health, it can be relegated to things like blood pressure, cholesterol, body mass index, all very important. But I love this more, I call it more of a spiritual scorecard. Did I get a hug today? Did I give a hug today? Did I make eye contact and really sincerely? Barbara Fredrickson from North Carolina, Chapel Hill, she talks a lot about these things called micro moments of heart resonance, where her research at Chapel Hill says when we have as little as a 20-second interaction with maybe a person at the checkout, somebody out in just public walking towards us in the street, a sincere eye contact with a half smile actually has a phenomenal benefit to our heart health, and at the same time emotionally boosts serotonin. And these are kind of like walking around, you get a chance to be a pharmacy on wheels. You are literally building your own pharmaceuticals by making an intention to have a different scorecard of social connection, conscious hug, eye contact. These are all beautiful things that we can do every single day that not only augment our physiological well-being, but are beautifully contagious to the people who we are blessed to do it with.
You know, I actually witnessed Dr. Lefferman in action at Redondo Beach, and he went up to one of his patients, and the first thing he did is put his hand on her shoulder, and she smiled and lit up. It was like, you know, just I think the physical touch, I just agree 100%. But in the 21-second hugs, do you do group hugs and, you know, to save a little time there, or is it just individual?
Right, you want,
like,
can it be economy of scale? I mean, like, can I get?
I'm just thinking about, okay, because I'm going to probably start counting, you know.
Oh, you know what? And here's what's
all the
great,
kids
Susan.
come home, I just go group hug.
You can
21
see how
seconds.
many
hug
kids
works.
he has.
Yeah, group hug totally works. And I think the thing is going to be really fun, and this is something I think we would all, everyone who's part of tonight's experience, there's always going to be that person when you go in for that 21 second, they get like 7 or 8 seconds. They want to dismount. It gets uncomfortable, right? People are like, okay, I'm out. And you respectfully ask them, can we just stay here for a little bit longer? And as people surrender, you feel like the physiology and the musculature and everything starts to shift as someone allows that connection. And it's a beautiful thing to think about how medicine is inside of all of us, and a hug is healing. And if we are vulnerable to that extent, we can open up and allow those things to happen. You know, beautiful things ensue from there.
You know, full disclosure, I just say I'm a hugger. Is that okay? The first time I meet people. So especially after COVID, because the lack was there, I feel like I have to make up. Let's talk about mornings and movement, and a little bit about exercise for longevity. Dr. Lefferman?
You know, if I think we're talking about mornings and as it pertains to seniors, and again, from my perspective in senior facilities, I would say it's easy to have a very regimented schedule, and you know the breakfast is this hour to that hour, lunch is 12 to 1, and it doesn't, you know, everybody's body system is different, and so I think that you need to allow for that. Ideally, a community allows for that flexibility, so that you know, they might say, well, he's skipping breakfast, and that might be, you know, maybe that's concerning, but maybe he makes up for it with, with a big lunch and a big dinner, and maybe 2 meals are sufficient. And, so maybe, I might also hear like, well, he's not sleeping well. But then when I investigate, he went to sleep at like, or he's getting up early. Maybe he's getting up at 2 o'clock, but he went to bed, fell asleep right after dinner at 7 or 8. So that's a pretty good night's sleep. So I think that's an important aspect to consider, is that everyone's schedules are different, and that you need to allow for flexibility. But in terms of activity in the morning, I think that it doesn't necessarily need to be in the morning. Some people are better exercisers in the morning. Some people are better in the evening. I think if we're talking about the younger population, my understanding is there are more studies showing that there's a benefit to exercising later in the day. I know personally, if I don't do it in the morning, then it's very challenging to find the time later in the day, or things get busy, I get home and the kids need me, etc. So, I think there needs to be flexibility around what you're doing.
I think flexibility and balance, if we're going to do any takeaways here, is really important, because we're all different. We all have different lifestyles. We all have different relationships. And if you can at least work on your own, which we're going to talk about self-care here in a minute. But Dr. James, any thoughts on mornings and routines and exercise?
Yeah, I think that I love the work of Lisa Miller. She's a PhD at Columbia, who started a whole program on basically the power of ritual. It's sort of, she calls it spirituality and mental health. And her research is compelling around having a morning ritual, whether it is walking, or whether it's praying, meditating, having breakfast, anything that we ritualize. She talks about how it changes our brain over time if we connect to it as a ritual. And her whole idea is something called the upward spiral. She says that people who have something in the morning, and the flexibility, I love that we're both kind of speaking to that, but flexibility, but having something that you ritualize that isn't easy, but it's very intentional. Prayer can be intentional. Taking that walk can be intentional. Getting outside in the morning and in your driveway, you're kind of greeting the sun, doing a sun salutation, intentional. Her research says that creates an upward spiral that for the rest of the day, physiologically, neurochemically, it tends to really augment our overall well-being, our performance. And it's something as simple as just choosing the ritual, and then most importantly, following through and being present for it. I think so often in life, we're amazing at doing so many things all day long, but we weren't present enough to even say, oh my gosh, I really was amazing today. I was just busy, but you weren't connected to any of those things. Rituals require a real intention, a real connection. You're present. And if we could all choose to do that one thing every morning, whatever you choose to do it, do that level of with zeal and focus, it has phenomenal benefit for our well-being.
And, it is summer and we are traveling, and I will pat myself on the back here, but I have my little morning ritual. And even with travel, you can carve out just 10 to 15 minutes for yourself, because I agree with you. I think it starts the day off on the right foot. A question came in for both of you. Exercise in extreme heat, are you doing more damage than good?
That's a really, really good. I'm living at 8,000 feet in the Rockies, and we're at 90 degrees today. It's never been this hot in 30 years. And the air quality is not good because of that and many other factors. I think when it gets to be this type of situation, if you can't exercise indoors, by all means, be careful about being outdoors. Air quality suffers in the heat. We suffer in the heat. If you can do it indoors, it's going to be safer. It's going to be healthier. That's just a short answer, Susan.
Anything to add?
I would agree, and I would add that discussions I frequently have with my patients who are limited, physical limitations, largely based, having arthritis, maybe they have a history of a stroke, is how can you be creative to find opportunities for exercise and maybe strength training. One example that I give them is, even if you're lying in bed and you have like 2 cans of soup, 2 cans of beans, and you're doing curls with those, it can have a benefit. And there's also a version of exercise, plyometrics, where you're really not using any weights, but you could do, knee bends, different, using your body weight to do different exercises. And so it doesn't necessarily require going out and running several miles, and especially running several miles in the heat. So there's more and more science around this, and there's a lot of opportunities that one can have for exercise and strength building and intentionality without needing to go outside.
Dr. Lefferman, Susan, is it okay if I just add one thing to that? Because I'm so grateful Dr. Lefferman brought this up.
Of course.
Whether you're a caregiver, you've got parents who are aging, or you're part of an aging population yourself, and you're wondering about muscle, this is something that I'm finding more and more fascinating. A study was just published 2 weeks ago on a group of 90-year-olds, I think it was 37 90-year-old people, and starting a very, very light resistance training program. I mean, I'm talking possibly 2-pound hand weights. And over the course of 3 months, there was literally an 86% increase in strength. And they are 90 years old. So this idea that we get to a certain age and resistance training or plyometrics or muscle is sort of a voluntary loss. There's something called sarcopenia, a great Scrabble word. If you lay down sarcopenia, the game is over. Promise you. But sarcopenia basically is the loss of lean muscle. It also is a very strong relationship to accelerated aging and mortality. So keeping lean muscle in your body isn't about whether or not you're 90 or 30. It's about whether or not you use your body and decide, I'm going to keep muscle on my body. And it is one of the most powerful biomarkers for longevity. It is associated with being on the planet longer and stronger.
So ditch your cell phones by your bedside and grab your Campbell's soup. But, we talked a little bit about blue zones and people live longer and longevity and all that. And exercise is a big component of that. But it's not necessarily going out and walking 10,000 steps. It's working in the garden. It's picking the garden for the dinner. It's going to the farmer's market. It's, it's really lifestyle. So I think lifestyle is such an important component. A lovely lady asked if she should be worried that her husband takes 2 to 4 hour naps every day. Dr. Lefferman, you want to start with that?
I think if he's healthy, throughout the rest of the day, if he wakes up from those naps and he's alert and he's not continuing to need this, if it's one nap, if it's not, several naps, or he's dozing at other times of the day, then I think that's completely normal. And it gets back to what I said about flexibility. There's no one schedule, and maybe he's better not sleeping at night and napping during the day. I think there's some, anecdotes from some of our world's greatest thinkers. One of them, I don't think he slept much, at night, but he would nap during the daytime. I know someone who, my personal exercise is largely through playing soccer, and someone that I've looked up to over the years is Cristiano Ronaldo, who's a soccer player from Portugal, and I forget the exact number, but it's pretty extreme, his napping schedule. He's a very set, I think it might be like 6 or 7 naps throughout the day on a typical day, and he sleeps very little at night. So there's a wide variety on what is healthy and acceptable.
He's a 21-second hugger. I just know. Dr. James, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I think that I am a huge fan of napping, number one. The science is absolutely awesome on this whole idea of cognitive resetting. If we go down for at least 20 minutes, studies show, in the afternoon, and to Dr. Lefferman's point, it's not something to be concerned about unless it's like, oh my goodness, they're taking 3-4 hour naps a day. Then I would be like, okay, let's do a little deeper dive and see what's happening. But there was a great study that was done recently on the power of napping. There's a book that I'll see if I can find it, Susan. I'll send it over to you. The title, we can send it out. But it's a physician who literally has spent his last 20 years studying napping. And one of his big takeaways is this cognitive reset that happens. So for people who are doing a lot of thinking or a lot of worrying or a lot of all the things. If we can look at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, 2 o'clock, and saying, oh I'm looking, I have a couch here in my office. I'm here religiously at 1 in the afternoon. I go in for 20 minutes. I pop out after a 20-minute nap, and oh my goodness, I feel like I'm on fire again. And then you look at the data of what that's happening, the mitochondria, the things that give us energy, they are kind of getting their boost. It's a beautiful, beautiful ritual.
I survived 3 pregnancies through 10-minute naps. I mean, literally. Last question here, and then any closing thoughts. Recommendations for lower back pain. Dr. Lefferman, do you want to start?
Mobility. I think that's that's really key. I frequently hear from patients that I'm taking it easy because my back hurts. Well, obviously there is are reasons for one to really take it easy, but lubricating those joints, keeping active, really by and large is better than staying sedentary. And so, as well, thinking outside of the box as far as non-medicinal options, and I would say in particular non-narcotic options. There are medications are helpful sometimes, and I think this is one area where, especially as one ages, it's hard to turn back the clock as far as damage to one's spine over time and arthritis. And while for younger patient, maybe acupuncture might help, or massage might help. It can have benefit in seniors, but a routine anti-inflammatory, like a low dose of Tylenol, not Motrin, which can or ibuprofen, which can upset your stomach. But that's one area that taking something on a routine basis, like a Tylenol, can help. So it's you need to stay active. And I think that definitely is one area where sometimes you need the help of medicine, because it's hard to go back in time.
You never realize how much you need your back until you don't have it. I'll tell you. Dr. James?
Yeah, I concur with everything Dr. Lefferman was sharing. And Susan, you and I have talked over the years about something called soul snacks. Now, that's an interesting idea that you basically can just put in that idea of what your soul snack is. It's beautifully personal. I'm a huge fan of a lot of us doing a lot of sitting, whether it's we're sitting with a loved one, whether or not we're sitting because of our job, or just sitting because that's where we are in our life and we're tired. Even just getting up every hour, hour and a half, and making your way around the room, your house, that idea of lubricating, particularly the lower spine, the SI joints, they love movement. So if we can do the soul snack of just mindful movement, nothing dramatic. We're not talking about a yoga practice necessarily, or doing deadlifts with dumbbells. Just moving and really having those hinge joints at your hips to really have movement. And again, I'll preface this with check with your doctor or your healthcare person, but I find more and more of my patients absolutely benefit from magnesium. We are chronically deficient magnesium, where it's not in our soil the way it used to be, so it's not in our food the way it used to be. And research shows that by and large, particularly the North American population, is vastly deficient in magnesium. Magnesium's number one job, it keeps muscles moving wonderfully well, helps our heart muscle to work wonderfully well, helps with efficiency of stroke volume. All those wonderful things happen with magnesium. And if you're not interested in supplementing, nuts and seeds and black beans and legumes, all of those contain whole grains, wonderful sources of magnesium.
Fantastic.
There's this great term that I've heard maybe a few years ago, that sitting is the new smoking. So, based on what Dr. Ross was saying, yes, anything you can do to get up and moving.
So our next webinar, audience, look forward to this again, because we're going to get this on the calendar in the next few months. We're going to do a virtual webinar where we're going to be moving the whole time, and we can have
my gosh, let's do that.
The whole audience can stand up and move with us, with your phone, your iPad, or your computer. We'll just do a little movement activity. But I would love to obviously do this again, because knowledge is king, in my opinion, and the best practices that we can encourage, especially our senior population, I think is so, so, so important. Do you have anything to close with, Dr. James?
Number one, I just want to say thank you, Susan. Thank you to Kensington. Dr. Lefferman, thank you for the work that you do, the heart-centered work that you do, my friend. Kensington is a resource. I've had the blessing of being part of this community for, gosh, it's going into 5 years now. And I love every time I get a chance to engage with you, Susan, in this community. And I would just maybe leave everyone with this idea. We talked about the toxicity of the news, and we've talked about just the triggered nature of life these days. I am a huge believer that self-care, self-love is social activism. And it's not selfish to prioritize your well-being. And I believe it's beautifully contagious. So if anyone who's watching this afternoon, this evening going, oh my gosh, I just feel like I'd love to do these things, but I've got all these other things I need to do. I'm a huge believer that this is a contagious form of activism. When you prioritize your self-care, when you put good food in your body, when you move your body with a level of grace and gratitude, and you commit to rituals first thing in the morning, all of that is an activism that I believe is spiritual, it's physical, it's emotional. And our world needs to see demonstrations of that type of activism. It is beautifully non-political and wonderfully inclusive. So thank you, Susan.
Well, I've known Dr. James for 10 years, and I've known Dr. Lefferman for a few, and I know it's going to be many more. But all I can think about when you say that is 21-second self-hug. Although I can't really
Absolutely.
get my arms around completely. Dr. Lefferman, any closing?
Sure. Thank you, Susan, for bringing Dr. James and myself together. And it's really a unique opportunity, as he highlighted, for us to share and to collaborate. And I think this doesn't happen enough in the senior population. You know, so much of our healthcare system, the medical studies, the interventions are based on a younger population. And I think that, you know, one of the beauties of Kensington is to think about how they can meet the needs of seniors, and to try and think out of the box and bring some of these ideas to the forefront. And as a physician who takes care of seniors, obviously there's a focus on their medical needs, stroke, dementia, diabetes, etc. But I think that this is an area that is sorely lacking, and I try to address, but there's only so much I can do, because I'm not, I can't it's hard to write a prescription out to a facility, make sure that, Mrs. Jones is meditating for 5 minutes every morning. It doesn't quite work for like that, even though it seems like I need to write a prescription for everything that they're doing, every medication, intervention, etc. But I would say that the focus on some of these external factors, the soul snacks, as Dr. James has mentioned, their sleep and different types of activities, including religious health and interaction and sexual health and well-being. All these things are, they seem extraneous, but they can make a big difference, and they can have a big impact.
We talked about when we met a few months ago, wouldn't it be nice to have a prescription for senior living communities that incorporated these things that we're talking about for your health, for your happiness, that fear off dementia or depression. And wouldn't it be nice if we could do that? And I think any senior living community, especially Kensington, would be very open to that, in light that they have music every day, live music every day. So they're really committed to engaging and the health of their residents. But let's do this again in 2025. I just want to remind the audience that you will receive a copy of the webinar and access to these wonderful doctors. And please share with friends and family, because the more we can get the word out there and share this wonderful knowledge, the better off. So thank you so much. And I hope you cool down, Dr. James. I'm in Northern California and it's hot here. And I know Dr. Lefferman is at Redondo Beach, and you're lucky you have the sea breeze. But take care, and really good webinar. Thanks so much.
Take care.
Thank you so much.